As we've seen, whereas the old, simple, patriotic play of the famous victories of Henry V told the whole of Henry V's story in one play, Shakespeare took his time and made the story more complicated and interesting. He handled the youth of Henry V when he was Prince Harry in the two parts of Henry IV. In those plays, the prince's loyal companion is the knight Sir John Falstaff, originally called Sir John Oldcastle, but with his name changed to Falstaff when Oldcastle's descendants objected. Falstaff, we have seen, was the man who recruited the ragged army of soldiers in Henry IV, Part 2. He himself participates in the battles in Henry IV, but he is also something of a coward. His name, Falstaff, is suggestive of a staff or a stave, a handheld weapon like a pike. At the end of Henry IV, Part 2, we are assured that the story will continue. We will see Henry having become a king, having become King Henry V, and we will see him going to France, triumphing at Agincourt, defeating the French. And we are told that the story will be continued with Sir John Falstaff in it. But Sir John Falstaff is not in Henry V. Some of the audience members who went to see the original production, probably in 1599, would have been distinctly disappointed. Maybe they'd have asked for their money back. They've come to see another Falstaff play, to see the fat knight with his wonderful jokes, and he's not there. Nobody knows for sure why Shakespeare decided to omit the character of Falstaff from Henry V. It may be that the role was played by Will Kemp, the company's leading comic actor, who at exactly this time in 1599 fell out with the acting company and swanned off. He actually went and danced all the way to Norwich in Norfolk, a famous jig that lasted many days. Could it be that he left the company in the lurch and there was no one to play Falstaff? That's a possibility, although I'm not so sure about it because there's no firm evidence that Kemp would have played Falstaff. There are other actors, for instance, an actor in the company called Thomas Pope, who might have been Falstaff. The more likely explanation is that Shakespeare wanted to focus on King Henry as the warrior hero, and to give too much airtime, too much space to Falstaff would have destroyed the balance of the play. We would have lost a lot of sympathy and focus with the king. However, Shakespeare has to include within the play some justification for Falstaff not being there. And so it is that early in the action, we have the scene where Mistress Quickly, who's been the hostess of the tavern where so many of the Falstaff and Prince Harry scenes have taken place in the Henry IV plays, Mistress Quickly tells of Falstaff's death. Rumour of Falstaff's death spreads through the army in France. There's an extraordinary moment when Fluellen, who is a loyal soldier, a loyal non-commissioned officer, great supporter of the king, is comparing the greatness of King Harry as a warrior to Alexander the Great, the exemplary warrior of the ancient world. And Fluellen gives all sorts of comparisons between Henry and Alexander. They're both great generals. They both come from a place that begins with M. Harry comes from Monmouth in Wales, whereas Alexander came from Macedon. And then he says something else they have in common is that they both broke the hearts of their best friend. Alexander the Great had a loyal friend and follower, perhaps lover, called Clytus, whom he destroyed in his drunkenness. And by the same account, Fluellen says, King Henry got rid of Falstaff, broke the heart of Falstaff. It's a reminder of what the king has had to sacrifice in order to become a warrior. But from a dramatic point of view, Shakespeare needed an element of comedy within the play. And so it is that one of the lesser figures from Henry IV, Part 2, Ancient Pistol, as he's called, does join the army to France, and Pistol's exploits on the battlefield become a kind of substitute for Falstaff's. One of the things that must be going on here is a joke in the names of these characters pertaining to the variety of weaponry on the battlefield in the Shakespearean drama. Think back to that muster roll. From each community, you would have a certain number of pikemen and a certain number of musketeers recruited. I've got here a couple of wonderful objects from the period in the collections of the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. A flintlock musket. You can see how long it is. This is a weapon from the age of gunpowder, of linstock, of explosion. And then I've also got a spearhead with a figure of a militiaman on it with his pike. The gun, whether it be cannon, musket, or pistol, and the spear, whether it be the staff, the pike, or the spear that you shake. Shakespeare's own coat of arms has a joke about his name, Shakespeare. It includes a spear. One of the most terrifying images in Henry V is when the king threatens the people of Harfleur and speaks of how if they don't give up the city, their babies will be spiked on the pikes of the English. But what is most terrifying for the soldiers is the effect of gunpowder, not what comes from the spear, but what comes from the gun.